Right now, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is speaking on Opposition Day and will be introducing a motion of non-confidence, a 12-word common sense confidence motion, as they are saying. Let's listen in.
Promises that this Prime Minister has broken. But what's different with this promise is that it wasn't a promise made by this Prime Minister. It wasn't his promise to make. It was the promise that belongs to all of us, the promise that all Canadians, everyone in Canada, could expect to be kept, whether you were born in Canada or whether you came to this country from elsewhere. So it's with great sadness that we see that now young people who work hard live in their parents' basements until they're 35 years old, something that was never the case before this Prime Minister and his policies doubled the cost of housing. There are 2,000 people who go to food banks every month. In Ontario, there are 1,800 homeless encampments. That's something we've never seen before. They're images that you would expect to come out of the third world. There are people who are dying in these encampments. Violence is up. Gun violence is up by 120%. After this Prime Minister, with the help of the Bloc Québécois, targeted hunters while freeing criminals and arms traffickers. What's the Bloc doing, Mr. Speaker? Well, the Bloc is helping. The Bloc has voted 188 times to keep this Prime Minister in power. It voted for $5 billion in inflationary, bureaucratic, centralizing spending. And I would add to that, of those $500 billion, well, that doesn't include health care or money for seniors. That money is already planned. They didn't have to vote for that. I'm talking about money that goes to consultants, to bureaucrats, to interest groups, and to big businesses that are subsidized by the government. At the same time as the government is voting to increase gas taxes, including in Quebec, with the second carbon tax that applies in Quebec, and the capital gains tax, which is going to force Quebec's farmers, Quebec's entrepreneurs, Quebec's doctors, and Quebec's home builders to spend more money, to send more money to Ottawa, which will be controlled by the government of Canada. And even the things that the Bloc are asking for now would increase the size of the federal government. You know, I was part of a government that increased healthcare transfers. That's true. I'm not a separatist. They are saying that to fund healthcare, you have to send more of Quebecers' money to Ottawa so that it can then be sent back to Quebec. They want the federal government to have even more control over the health care of the province of Quebec. And they recognize that federal programs are essential for Quebecers, which goes against their desire for sovereignty. So there's a contradiction at the heart of the Bloc Québécois. And now the Bloc Québécois wants to maintain the most centralizing Prime Minister in history in power. A Prime Minister who has an immigration policy that his own immigration minister has said is out of control. A Prime Minister who's pushed Quebec to the breaking point. The Bloc Québécois is saying, well, no, wait, listen, we can't change anything right now. We're going to wait. We'll wait for a little while. Let's wait until Quebecers can't get health care, can't get social care, a house. When Quebecers will see an economy that has the lowest GDP per capita in 10 years, they're telling Quebecers, wait, keep waiting. They say they don't know what I'm going to do. In immigration, my policy is very clear. You've seen it. I was in government. We'll have exactly the same approach to immigration that we had 10 years ago. It gave a lot of power to the provinces, and it controlled the numbers to, yes, let people come into Canada to work, to deal with the labor shortage, but in numbers that we were able to absorb into our labor market, into our housing market, and into our healthcare system. That's the approach that I took when we were in government, and that's the approach that I will take when we are back in government. I've already presented a lot more details than any of the other opposition leaders. The Bloc leader hasn't said anything about most of these issues. So I will be even more clear in an election campaign with a common sense plan to cut taxes, fix the budget, build homes, and stop the crime. We are going to cut taxes so that work is worth it, so that our waiters, our truckers, our plumbers who work more get more, so that they can bring their paychecks back home. But they have to have a home. Now, there are fewer homes per capita than in any other G7 country here in Canada. There's too much bureaucracy. I will incite municipalities to accelerate the delivery of permits, to free up land so that we can build, while cutting taxes that prevent construction so that young people can dream of having a home. Yes. We will put in place a cap on population growth so that the housing supply goes up more quickly than our population. We will fix the budget with a law that forces the government to find $1 of spending for every $1 of savings for every new dollar of spending, and that'll help to balance the budget. You know, Canadians have to balance their own budgets, and they expect us to have the same common sense. We will cut the consultants that the Bloc voted for, the bureaucracy, the waste, the big subsidies for multinational companies that are taking money out of our country. We're going to cut that to keep the money here in Canada, to bring down the deficit, to bring down inflation, and to bring down interest rates so that we can pay for our social services. We'll stop the crime, not by banning hunting weapons, which is what the Bloc and the Liberals want, but by fighting criminals and by strengthening the border. Madam Speaker, that will allow us to have a country where hard work leads to a bigger paycheck. It allows you to buy food, housing, and gas in safe communities where anyone from anywhere can achieve anything with hard work. That is the promise of Canada. That's what we will bring back to our country. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, this country made me a promise when I was born. It made the same promise to everyone in this room and across this country. I was born to a 16-year-old single mom who put me up for adoption to 2 school teachers, and they taught me about this promise. The promise was that anyone from anywhere could do anything, that hard work would earn a powerful paycheck, they would buy you good food and a decent home in a safe neighborhood. It's that promise that brought my wife's family here as refugees from Venezuela. 6 people in a 2-bedroom basement, working-class Montreal apartment. Her dad up at the crack of dawn to hop on the back of a pickup truck and go out into the middle of a farm field and pick fruit so that he could pay the rent. Today, her brothers are a soldier, a carpenter. Her sister is a nurse. Her father has a business with his wife, and they have all succeeded. The promise was kept. It was that promise that got me into politics in the first place, and I was very proud to be part of a government that not only kept the promise, but expanded it. With the lowest inflation in almost half a century, incomes after tax and inflation that went up 10%, we cut the GST, we balanced the budget. We did it all while increasing health care transfers faster than any government since that transfer. That's why I welcome every single time. They talk about my experience in government is doing the exact same things that I would like to do in the future, which is to expand the opportunity, expand the promise of this country. But that promise, after 9 years of the NDP Liberal Prime Minister, is broken. Everything costs more, with 2 million people lined up at food banks because they cannot afford food. This is a record-smashing number. 1 in 10 Torontonians now eat at a food bank every single month. Housing costs have doubled, so that 2/3 of young people believe they will never be able to afford a home. That has never happened in Canadian history. And we see it most tragically in our streets, where there are now 1,800 homeless encampments across Canada, across Ontario, 35 in Halifax. Quaint, beautiful, once prosperous Halifax has 35 homeless encampments. The Prime Minister admits in his own press releases 1 in 4 kids are not getting enough food. Malnutrition and diseases linked to it that had long ago been eradicated are making comebacks. We've lost 47,000 people to drug overdoses, more than we lost in the Second World War. These numbers are stories. They are human lives. When the NDP says, all these people can just wait, we don't need to fix these problems now, we could just delay another year and let thousands more die, thousands more lose their homes and move into dangerous tent encampments. Thousands more become addicted to government-funded drugs or be killed by a rampant career criminal released once again for the 76th time to unleash chaos in our streets. They say wait to those Canadians who are suffering the pain of a brutal economy, the worst economy since the Great Depression. The per capita GDP, that's income per person, is down more than at any time since the Great Depression. In fact, our economy per capita is smaller today than it was 10 years ago. Our income per person has dropped more than any other G7 country since 2019, the year before the pandemic, while the American economy has grown 19%, right next door. The gap between our per capita GDP and the Americans is now worse than at any time since at least World War II, and according to one Liberal economist, Trevor Tom, the worst in a century. We've gone from winning the war of capitalism with the Americans, the tug of war, where they were investing 30 to 100 billion more per year in our economy than we were investing in theirs in the first 14 years of this century, to in the last 9 years, 450 billion more Canadian money invested in the States than the reverse. Wow. Canadian dollars building pipelines, mines, business centers, shopping centers, and businesses that pay American paychecks. I love America, but I don't want to bring jobs to Americans. I want to bring home those jobs and the Canadian promise to this country. That's why we have a common sense plan to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. Axe the tax. This will be a carbon tax referendum, a carbon tax election. And I know that the media has worked hard to try and avoid me saying the words carbon tax, as we saw in the extremely dishonest and fraudulent report from Bell Media-controlled CTV, who's a company that is whose bonds have been downgraded to near junk status as its overpaid CEO empties the books to pay his wealthy friends an unacceptably and unrealistically high dividend. But the reason why he and his other cronies of that company are going after me is because he knows that I'm standing up for the people against the crony capitalists and insiders like him. Carbon tax election. Here's the existential choice. Do we go to a 61 cent a liter carbon tax, making us among the highest taxed fuel in all of the world? A tax that will grind our economy to a halt, that will force our truckers to leave to the U.S. where there is no carbon tax. Nobody left to bring goods to our grocery store, parts to our factories, jobs to our people. It will be a nuclear winter if this happens. That's why common sense conservatives will axe the tax. We will bring home jobs, paychecks, businesses, and opportunity with abundant, affordable energy. We will fight climate change and protect our economy with technology, not taxes, by approving large-scale green projects that generate nuclear, hydroelectric, carbon capture and storage, and other sources of affordable, clean Canadian energy will once again get approved when we repeal the anti-development law C-69, all of which will generate the revenues so that we can fix the budget. We will fix the budget by unleashing massive growth through the elimination of bureaucratic barriers and firing gatekeepers so that our projects can get built, setting the goal that all three levels of government should aspire to have the fastest